66 million years ago, Earth experienced a moment so violent, so transformative, that it permanently altered the course of life on this planet. An asteroid roughly 6 miles wide, about the size of Mount Everest laid on its side, slammed into what is now the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. The impact released energy equal to billions of nuclear bombs detonating at once. In a fraction of a second, the planet changed forever. The asteroid struck with such unimaginable force that the rock itself vaporized on impact. The surrounding crust melted instantly, blasting molten debris thousands of miles across the atmosphere. A crater more than 150 kilometers wide opened in the Earth like a wound. Shockwaves raced through the crust of the planet. Earthquakes measuring up to magnitude 11 or 12 rippled across continents, stronger than any quake humanity has ever recorded. Coastal regions faced walls of water hundreds of feet tall as planet-wide tsunamis surged outward from the impact site. But the devastation was only beginning. Superheated debris blasted into the upper atmosphere before falling back down across the entire planet. As it re-entered, it heated the sky like a furnace. The air itself became an oven. Across forests, plains, and jungles, global firestorms ignited simultaneously. Entire ecosystems burned. Imagine standing on a prehistoric plain. Suddenly, the sky glows red. Then everything catches fire. For creatures living on Earth at that moment, the apocalypse was not gradual. It arrived in hours. Yet even this global inferno wasn't the true killer. Because after the flames came the darkness. Billions of tons of ash, soot, and pulverized rock filled the atmosphere. The debris formed a thick veil around the planet, blocking sunlight. Day became twilight. To twilight became night. Temperatures dropped worldwide. The planet entered what scientists now call an impact winter. Plants began to die. Without sunlight, photosynthesis stopped almost immediately. Forests collapsed, grasslands withered, and the base of the food chain disappeared. Herbivores starved first. Then the predators followed. Within a relatively short time, perhaps years, perhaps decades, roughly 75% of all species on Earth vanished. Among them were the creatures that had ruled the planet for more than 160 million years. The dinosaurs. For millions upon millions of years, dinosaurs had dominated every continent. They filled the skies as feathered predators. They thundered across plains in herds larger than anything alive today. They ruled rivers, forests, deserts, and coastlines. Then, almost overnight in geological terms, they were gone. But here is where the story takes a strange turn. Because the extinction of the dinosaurs did not end the age of monsters. It only changed them. A world rebuilt from ash. When the fires cooled and the skies slowly cleared, Earth entered a new chapter. The Paleocene epoch. The planet was quiet. Too quiet. Entire ecosystems had collapsed. The dominant creatures that once filled those ecosystems were gone, leaving enormous ecological gaps. Predator niches were empty. Herbivore niches were empty. For millions of years, evolution had been locked into balance with dinosaurs at the top. Now that balance was gone. Nature had to rebuild the world from scratch. At first, life was fragile. Forests slowly returned. Rivers filled with new life. Small animals began spreading across landscapes once dominated by giant reptiles. Mammals, once small and mostly nocturnal during the dinosaur age, suddenly found themselves in a world full of opportunity. They grew larger, more specialized, more aggressive. Evolution accelerated. Nature began experimenting, and some of those experiments became terrifying. Because once ecosystems stabilized again, the new predators that emerged were not smaller or gentler. In many cases, they were stranger, faster, and far more unsettling. Among the earliest rulers of this rebuilt world were creatures that few people expect to dominate the top of the food chain. Birds. Not the birds we know today. Not small songbirds or graceful eagles. These were birds that did not fly. They ran fast, and they hunted. The rise of the terror birds. In prehistoric South America, one group of predators rose to dominance with a body plan that looked almost absurd until you realized what it could do. They were known as terror birds. The scientific name for the group is Forus racidae, and for nearly 60 million years, they ruled an entire continent. Picture a bird standing nearly 3 meters tall. Its legs are long, powerful, built for sprinting. Its body is massive and muscular, but the most disturbing feature is the head. A skull nearly 70 centimeters long, ending in a huge, hooked beak designed for one purpose: crushing bone. One of the largest known species, Kalinkin, stood almost 10 feet tall. Its skull alone was larger than the head of most dogs. And attached to that skull was a neck built like a biological sledgehammer. Unlike modern birds of prey, terror birds did not swoop down from the sky. They chased. Fossil evidence suggests many species could run faster than 48 kilometers per hour. That's faster than most humans can sprint. Imagine running through prehistoric forests. Behind you, the ground shakes. You turn around, and a 10-foot bird is gaining on you. When terror birds caught prey, the killing technique was brutal. The massive beak functioned almost like a pickaxe. They would strike downward repeatedly with incredible force, targeting the skull or spine. Each blow could shatter bone. Some scientists believe they used a method similar to modern predatory birds. They grabbed smaller prey and shook violently, using their powerful neck muscles to snap spines. Others believe they delivered repeated stabbing strikes until vital organs failed. Either way, death came from a bird, and somehow that makes it even more unsettling. Intelligent hunters. Terror birds may have been more than just fast killers. Modern birds, such as crows and parrots, demonstrate surprisingly high intelligence. They solve problems, use tools, and remember complex environments. If terror birds possessed even a fraction of that intelligence, they were not just predators. They were thinking predators. They could adapt. They could learn. That they could change hunting strategies depending on the behavior of their prey. And they had a continent almost entirely to themselves. For most of their history, South America was isolated from other landmasses. Large mammalian predators like wolves, lions, and bears simply didn't exist there yet. That meant terror birds had almost no competition. They filled every predatory niche available. Smaller species hunted rodents and reptiles. A mid-sized species chased mammals across open plains. The largest species targeted animals as large as modern horses. For millions of years, they were the undisputed apex predators of their world. But while giant birds ruled the land, something far more enormous lurked in the rivers and swamps. Something that made even terror birds cautious when approaching the water's edge. A creature so massive that when paleontologists first discovered its fossils, they thought the measurements had to be wrong because no snake should be that big. And yet it was. A serpent longer than a city bus. A predator capable of eating crocodiles. And for a brief window in Earth's history, it ruled the waterways of prehistoric South America. Its name was Titanoboa. For millions of years after the dinosaurs vanished, South America became one of the strangest evolutionary laboratories Earth had ever seen. The continent was isolated. No wolves, no lions, no bears. While the rest of the world developed familiar mammalian predators, South America evolved its own collection of monsters. Some walked on 2 legs. Some crushed bone like hydraulic presses, and some slithered through rivers like living nightmares. Because while terror birds ruled the land above, the water belonged to something far larger. Titanoboa, the snake that ate crocodiles. In 2009, a paleontologist working in Colombia uncovered a series of enormous fossilized vertebrae inside an ancient rock formation known as the Cerrejón Formation. At first, the discovery made no sense. The bones were too large, far too large. Researchers ran the measurements again, then again. The numbers didn't change. The fossils belonged to the largest snake ever discovered. Its name was Titanoboa cerrejonensis, and it was absolutely enormous. The Titanoboa stretched an estimated 42 feet long, about 13 meters. To understand how massive that is, consider this. The largest modern anacondas grow to around 20 to 25 feet. Titanoboa was nearly twice that length, but length alone doesn't tell the whole story. At its thickest point, the snake's body was as wide as a car tire. It weighed roughly 2,500 pounds, more than a small car. And unlike the giant snakes we know today, Titanoboa lived in a world perfectly suited for producing monsters, because 58 million years ago, the planet was hotter, much hotter. Global temperatures during the Paleocene were significantly warmer than today, and the tropical forests of South America were like biological pressure cookers. For cold-blooded animals like snakes, warmer temperatures allow larger body sizes. The environment fuels their metabolism. The bigger the snake, the easier it is to dominate its ecosystem. Titanoboa took that evolutionary advantage to its extreme, but the real horror isn't its size, it's how it killed. Death by constriction. Hollywood often shows giant snakes crushing prey instantly. Reality is more disturbing. Constrictor snakes don't crush bones, they suffocate their victims. Here's how it works. The snake strikes first, grabbing prey with backward curving teeth. Then it wraps its body around the victim. Every time the prey exhales, the snake tightens slightly, then tightens again and again. With each breath, the victim loses a little more space to inhale. Eventually, the lungs can no longer expand. The chest cavity collapses. Blood circulation fails. Organs shut down. Death comes slowly. Now imagine that process delivered by 2,000 pounds of muscle. Titanoboa could apply thousands of pounds of pressure across dozens of coils. Anything caught in that grip wasn't escaping. And the fossil evidence suggests its prey list was impressive. Ancient crocodilians, massive turtles, large fish. Some crocodiles living alongside Titanoboa grew up to 20 feet long. Titanoboa ate them. Picture a giant crocodile sliding into a river. From below, something larger wraps around it. Then the water goes still. For several million years, South America's waterways belonged to that predator. But Titanoboa's reign did not last forever. As global climates cooled over time, the environment that supported such gigantic cold-blooded animals began to change. Lower temperatures meant slower metabolism, and eventually, maintaining such enormous body mass became impossible. Titanoboa vanished from the fossil record. But the Paleocene world wasn't finished producing nightmares. Because while giant snakes ruled the rivers, the land was about to be claimed by something new. Something that looked like a pig, but behaved more like a walking apocalypse. The hell pigs. Their nickname sounds almost humorous. Hell pigs. But the creatures behind that name were anything but funny. Their real scientific family name is Entelodontidae, and they were some of the most terrifying mammals to ever walk the earth. At first glance, they resemble pigs. Large heads, heavy bodies, powerful jaws. But a closer look reveals something far more disturbing. Their skulls were massive, some reaching 3 feet long. Their jaws were lined with thick, bone-crushing molars and sharp canine teeth, and the sides of their skulls featured large, bony flanges, structures that anchored enormous jaw muscles. These animals were built for biting, hard. The largest species, like Daeodon, stood nearly 6 feet tall at the shoulder and could weigh close to 1,000 pounds. Imagine a creature with the body of a boar, the head of a predator, and the temperament of something that would happily eat almost anything. Because entelodonts did. Fossil evidence shows they were omnivores. Plants, carrion, small animals, large animals. If it could be eaten, they ate it. And they weren't picky about whether it was alive first. Bone crushers. One of the most telling clues about hell pig behavior comes from their teeth. In many entelodont fossils show heavy tooth wear, the kind that occurs when animals regularly chew bone. That means they didn't just eat meat. They crushed skeletons. Much like modern hyenas, hell pigs likely scavenged carcasses left behind by other predators. But they probably didn't stop there. Their size and aggression suggest they could easily drive other predators away from kills. Picture a pack of wolves feeding on a carcass. Then a 1,000-pound hell pig arrives. A huge jaws, massive skull, bone-crushing bite force. The wolves would leave. Fast. But there's another reason scientists believe these animals were especially dangerous. They may have been intelligent. Studies of their brain size relative to body mass suggest entelodonts had above-average cognitive abilities for mammals of their time. They were probably capable of problem-solving, learning, and possibly even social coordination, which means they weren't just big and aggressive. They were smart predators, and smart predators are always the most dangerous ones. Violence. Within the species, perhaps the most disturbing evidence about hell pigs comes from their own fossils. Many skeletons show healed bite marks, but the bite marks match the teeth of other entelodonts. That means these animals fought each other frequently and violently. Broken bones, cracked skulls, deep bite wounds, and many of the individuals survived these encounters long enough for the injuries to heal. This wasn't occasional conflict. This was regular, brutal combat, territory disputes, food competition, possibly even cannibalism. Hell pigs lived in a world where even their own species was a threat. But despite their power, they weren't the largest predators experimenting during this time. Nature was still testing new designs, new body plans, and new ways to dominate the food chain. Some predators grew enormous skulls capable of crushing almost anything. Others evolved hunting strategies that relied on speed and coordination. And a few became so large that even today scientists struggle to imagine them moving across prehistoric landscapes. One of those creatures may have been the largest land carnivorous mammal that ever lived. A predator so massive that paleontologists originally thought the fossil belonged to something impossible. Its name was Andrewsarchus, and it might have been the most powerful land predator of its time. By the time mammals began evolving into larger predators, the planet was already changing again. Forests expanded, rivers spread across continents, wetlands stretched for thousands of kilometers. And in these waterways lived creatures that had already survived the extinction that wiped out the dinosaurs, crocodilians. They were ancient even then. While dinosaurs rose and fell, crocodiles endured with a body design so efficient it barely needed to change. Armored skin, explosive bite force, ambush tactics perfected over millions of years. Modern crocodiles are already terrifying. A large saltwater crocodile can grow over 20 feet long and weigh more than 2,000 pounds. Their bite force exceeds 16,000 newtons, enough to shatter bone instantly. But the post-dinosaur world looked at that design and made it worse. Much worse. Dinosuchus, the dinosaur hunter. Technically, this monster lived near the end of the dinosaur age, but its legacy extended into the early world that followed. Its name means terrible crocodile, and the name fits. The Dinosuchus could grow between 35 and 40 feet long. That's roughly the length of a city bus. Its skull alone measured nearly 6 feet long. To understand what that means, imagine standing at the edge of a prehistoric river. The water is calm. You see nothing. But beneath the surface waits an animal heavier than a car, with jaws large enough to swallow a human whole. Fossil evidence shows that Dinosuchus didn't just eat fish. It ate dinosaurs. Scientists have discovered dinosaur bones with bite marks matching Dinosuchus teeth. Large herbivorous dinosaurs, creatures weighing several tons, approached rivers to drink. And sometimes, they never left. The crocodile would explode from the water, clamp onto a limb or skull, and drag the victim underwater. Once submerged, the prey drowned. Then came the infamous crocodile maneuver known as the death roll. The predator spins violently in the water, tearing flesh and breaking bones until the victim is ripped apart. But even Dinosuchus, terrifying as it was, would eventually be overshadowed by something larger. Something heavier. Something that turned entire river systems into hunting grounds. Purosaurus, the 8-ton crocodile. Around 8 million years ago, in the vast wetlands of prehistoric South America, another crocodilian appeared. This one dwarfed almost everything around it. Its name was Purosaurus, and it was colossal. Estimates suggest Purosaurus could reach 12.5 meters long, over 41 feet, but length alone doesn't capture the true scale. This animal may have weighed 8 tons. That's heavier than a fully grown African elephant. Imagine an armored reptile the size of a truck floating silently beneath the surface of a swamp. The skull was enormous. The jaws were wider than a human torso. But the most terrifying feature was its bite. Scientists estimate Purosaurus had a bite force approaching 69,000 newtons. That's roughly 3 times stronger than a modern saltwater crocodile, and comparable to the legendary bite force of Tyrannosaurus rex. When Purosaurus bit down, bones didn't just crack. They shattered. Prey animals struck by those jaws would have experienced something closer to an explosion of bone fragments than a simple bite. Everything near water became potential prey. Massive turtles, a fish as large as humans, smaller crocodilians, mammals wandering too close to the shoreline. Even terror birds likely approached rivers cautiously. Because in the wetlands ruled by Purosaurus, everything eventually had to drink. And when it did, the giant crocodile was waiting. When crocodiles left the water, you might think crocodiles are already terrifying enough. Ambush predators hiding beneath murky water, explosive attacks, bone-crushing jaws. But evolution had another idea. Some crocodiles decided water wasn't enough. They left it and became land predators. These creatures were known as cebicids. Unlike modern crocodiles, which have cone-shaped teeth designed for gripping prey, cebicids evolved something different. Their teeth were xiphidont, flattened, serrated, blade-like. More similar to the teeth of meat-eating dinosaurs than modern crocodiles. These weren't ambush hunters waiting in rivers. They were active pursuit predators. Their limbs were positioned more vertically beneath their bodies, allowing them to run across land far more efficiently than modern crocodiles. They could chase prey across forests, across plains, across open landscapes. One of the most impressive examples was Barinasuchus, discovered in Venezuela. This predator could grow between 10 and 15 feet long. But what made it dangerous wasn't just size, it was how it hunted. Picture a crocodile charging across dry land, its armored body low to the ground, its long jaws opening wide. Inside, rows of serrated teeth built to slice through flesh like knives, unlike modern crocodiles that grab and drown their victims. Cebicids likely cut their prey apart directly. Their teeth functioned more like the blades of predatory dinosaurs. Every bite tore deep wounds. Blood loss alone could kill prey quickly. And because they hunted on land, there was no river to escape into, no water barrier for safety. If one of these predators spotted you, running into the forest might not help. Because it could follow. For tens of millions of years, these terrestrial crocodiles ruled parts of South America. But eventually, new competitors appeared. More advanced mammalian predators. Cats, dogs, bears. Over time, the Cenozoics disappeared. Their strange experiment in crocodile evolution ended. But while land was producing monsters like terror birds and hell pigs, the oceans were undergoing an even more dramatic transformation. Because when the dinosaurs vanished, the seas lost their rulers too. Marine reptiles like mosasaurs and plesiosaurs disappeared alongside the dinosaurs. Their extinction left enormous empty spaces in the ocean food chain. And nature hates empty niches. Within a few million years, new predators began rising from the depths. Not reptiles, not fish, but mammals returning to the sea, early whales. But these whales were nothing like the peaceful giants we know today. They were predators, enormous ones. Some of them hunted other whales. And among them was a creature so strange that the first scientists who found its fossils thought they had discovered a giant sea reptile. They called it Basilosaurus, the king lizard. But what they had actually discovered was one of the most terrifying whales that ever lived. When the dinosaurs disappeared, the oceans lost their most dominant predators. For millions of years during the Mesozoic Era, the seas had been ruled by enormous marine reptiles. Mosasaurs, plesiosaurs, massive predators with jaws full of dagger-like teeth that hunted everything from fish to other reptiles. Then the asteroid struck. And just like the dinosaurs on land, these marine reptiles vanished. The oceans were suddenly missing their rulers. But nature never leaves the top of the food chain empty for long. Within a few million years, something remarkable began to happen. Mammals started returning to the sea. Their distant ancestors had once walked on land, breathing air, moving across forests and plains. Now, evolution pushed some of them back into the water, and the results were strange, very strange. Some early whales still had legs, others hunted like giant sea serpents, and a few became something far more terrifying: whales that hunted other whales. Basilosaurus, the whale that ate. Whales, one of the most disturbing predators of the Eocene oceans, lived around 40 to 34 million years ago. Its name was Basilosaurus, which means king lizard. Early paleontologists gave it that name because the first fossils looked like the skeleton of a giant marine reptile. But they were wrong. Basilosaurus wasn't a reptile. It was an early whale, and it was enormous. Some individuals reached 60 feet long, roughly the length of a modern semi-truck. But its body didn't resemble modern whales. Instead of the bulky shape of a blue whale or humpback, Basilosaurus had a long, snake-like body. It moved through the ocean like a giant predator eel. But the most important feature was its teeth. Modern whales mostly feed on fish, squid, or tiny organisms like krill. Basilosaurus was different. Its teeth were built for ripping flesh. At the front of the jaws were large conical teeth used for gripping prey. Behind them were sharp, triangular teeth designed to slice meat. This combination made Basilosaurus one of the first true apex whale predators. And fossil evidence confirms exactly what it hunted: other whales, whale on whale predation. In the Eocene oceans, smaller whales like Dorudon shared the seas with Basilosaurus. Dorudon was around 5 meters long, roughly the size of a modern dolphin. But it wasn't the apex predator, it was prey. Many Dorudon fossils show bite marks that perfectly match Basilosaurus teeth. These aren't scavenging marks. They appear on bones in patterns that suggest active attacks, and meaning Basilosaurus hunted, killed, and ate other whales. Imagine an ocean ecosystem where whales hunted whales the way modern lions hunt zebras. The food chain had reorganized itself. At the top was a giant serpentine whale. Below it were smaller whales. Below them, fish and other marine animals. The Eocene Ocean had become a violent new battlefield. But Basilosaurus wasn't the only predator shaping these seas. Ambulocetus, the walking whale. To understand how whales became ocean hunters, scientists studied some of the earliest whale ancestors. One of the strangest is Ambulocetus, whose name literally means walking whale. Ambulocetus lived around 49 million years ago, and unlike modern whales, it still had fully functional legs. It could move on land, but it also hunted in water. Picture a creature roughly 3 meters long, with the body of a crocodile and the skull of a mammal. It probably waded in shallow water near riverbanks. When prey came to drink, Ambulocetus lunged forward, grabbing the victim and dragging it into the water. The hunting method was eerily similar to modern crocodiles, which means early whales may have begun their evolutionary journey as ambush predators. Over millions of years, these creatures adapted more fully to aquatic life. Legs shrank, bodies streamlined, and tails strengthened. But their role as predators remained. The sharks were getting bigger, while whales were evolving into ocean hunters. Another group of predators was expanding as well. Sharks. The early Cenozoic oceans were warm and filled with large prey. Perfect conditions for giant predatory sharks. One of the most important species during this time was Otodus obliquus. This shark lived between 60 and 45 million years ago, and it may have reached lengths of 30 feet. Otodus belonged to a lineage that would later produce one of the most famous predators in Earth's history, Megalodon. But even before Megalodon appeared, Otodus was already a formidable hunter. Its teeth were enormous, triangular, razor-sharp, designed for slicing chunks of flesh from large prey. These sharks likely hunted marine mammals, large fish, and possibly even smaller whales. And in the warm oceans of the Eocene, they had plenty of food. The seas had become crowded with predators. Whales hunting whales, sharks hunting whales, large fish hunting anything smaller. The result was an incredibly complex and incredibly violent ecosystem. A rapidly evolving ocean. What makes the post-dinosaur oceans especially remarkable is how quickly they changed. Within 10 to 15 million years after the extinction event, marine ecosystems had completely reorganized. The old reptile rulers were gone. In their place came mammals and sharks, new predators, new food chains, new evolutionary experiments. The ocean had become a massive laboratory for natural selection. Predators grew larger, faster, more specialized. Some hunted in packs, some hunted alone. Some hunted in ways that modern animals rarely do. And yet, despite all the chaos in the open ocean, there was still one environment even more alien. A place where sunlight never reached, where pressure crushed most forms of life, where creatures evolved bodies so strange they barely resemble animals at all. The deep sea. Down there, evolution created some of the most bizarre predators Earth has ever produced. Creatures with glowing lures, needle-like teeth, bodies designed for eternal darkness. And some of them looked less like animals and more like living nightmares. If the open ocean during the Eocene was dangerous, the deep ocean was something else entirely. Because the deeper you go beneath the surface of the sea, the stranger life becomes. Sunlight fades quickly in water. At about 200 meters deep, light begins to disappear. Below 1,000 meters, darkness becomes permanent. No sunrise, no sunset, just endless black water. Temperatures hover near freezing. Pressure increases with crushing force, strong enough to collapse the bodies of most animals, and yet, Life exists there. Not just life. Predators, creatures that evolved in total darkness, where the rules of the surface world no longer apply. In this alien environment, evolution produced animals that look less like normal fish and more like something from another planet. Some glow in the dark. Some have teeth too large to fit inside their own mouths. Some hunt using light, and others are built like living traps. The anglerfish, predator of the abyss. One of the most famous deep-sea predators is the anglerfish. At first glance, it almost looks like a joke. A small fish with a strange glowing bulb hanging from its head. But that glowing bulb is actually a biological lure. In the darkness of the deep ocean, even the faintest light attracts attention. A small fish swimming through the black water see the glow and assume it might be food. So they swim closer, closer, closer. Until suddenly, the anglerfish opens its mouth, and the trap snaps shut. Anglerfish have enormous jaws relative to their body size. Their mouths can open wide enough to swallow prey nearly as large as themselves. Rows of long, needle-like teeth curve inward, preventing anything from escaping once it enters the mouth. But perhaps the strangest thing about anglerfish isn't how they hunt. It's how they reproduce. In some species, male anglerfish are tiny, sometimes 1/10 the size of the female. When a male finds a female, he bites onto her body. Then something extraordinary happens. His body fuses with hers. Their circulatory systems merge. Eventually, the male becomes nothing more than a permanent reproductive organ attached to the female. In the deep sea, evolution has no room for romance. Only survival. The viperfish. Teeth of the darkness. Another predator that dominates the deep ocean is the viperfish. If you were to see one up close, it would look almost unreal. Its teeth are enormous, so large that they cannot fit inside its mouth. Instead, the fangs curve outward like daggers. Some extend nearly as long as the fish's own head. But in the darkness of the deep sea, this design makes perfect sense. When prey drifts close, the viperfish lunges forward and impales the victim on its teeth. Escape is nearly impossible. But the viperfish has another advantage. It also glows. Along its body are rows of tiny organs called photophores. These produce faint light used for camouflage and communication. Some species can even flash these lights rapidly, confusing prey before attacking. In a world without sunlight, light becomes a weapon. Ancient ocean predators. While strange fish dominated the deep sea, the ancient oceans were also home to giant predators that hunted closer to the surface. Long before modern whales and sharks reached their current dominance, the seas hosted enormous marine hunters. One of the most powerful was Liopleurodon. This massive pliosaur lived during the Jurassic period and could grow up to 10 meters long. Its skull alone was over 2 meters in length. Inside were massive conical teeth designed for gripping slippery prey. But the real weapon was its bite force. With jaws powered by enormous muscles, Liopleurodon could crush bones and tear apart large marine animals with ease. Fish, squid, other marine reptiles. Nothing was safe once those jaws closed. Another giant predator was Pliosaurus, a close relative of Liopleurodon. Some estimates suggest Pliosaurus had teeth over 30 centimeters long. Each tooth was essentially a biological dagger. Combined with a powerful body built for fast swimming, these creatures were among the most fearsome hunters of prehistoric oceans. The ocean's constant evolution. The story of ocean predators is one of constant change. When one dominant predator disappears, another evolves to replace it. Marine reptiles vanished after the asteroid impact. Then whales and sharks rose to take their place. Later still, other predators would appear. The ocean never stays empty for long. New hunters evolve. New food chains form. New ecosystems emerge, and sometimes the new predators are even more efficient than the ones before them. But as terrifying as the oceans were, the land was undergoing its own strange transformations. Because millions of years after the dinosaurs disappeared, new ecosystems were forming across the continents. And in one place on Earth, those ecosystems became home to some of the strangest giant animals ever to live. A continent where evolution pushed creatures to extreme sizes. Giant reptiles, towering birds, predators that could run down their prey across open landscapes. That continent was Australia. And the animals that lived there during prehistory made modern wildlife look almost harmless by comparison. When most people imagine prehistoric predators, they picture giant reptiles roaring and attacking anything that moves. Hollywood often portrays dinosaurs as simple killing machines, huge, brutal, but ultimately driven only by instinct. Reality may have been far more disturbing, because fossil evidence increasingly suggests that many prehistoric predators were not just strong or fast. They were strategic. Some hunted in coordinated groups. Some deliberately crippled their prey before killing. And some species even turned on their own kind. The age of dinosaurs wasn't simply an era of giant animals. It may have been an era ruled by calculating predators, the pack hunters. One of the clearest examples comes from Utahraptor. This was one of the largest raptor dinosaurs ever discovered. About 6 meters long and weighing up to 680 kilograms, Utahraptor was roughly the size of a small car. But its most famous weapon was the massive sickle-shaped claw on each foot. Each claw measured nearly 15 inches long. When attacking prey, raptors likely leapt onto the victim and used those claws to slash deeply into muscle and organs. But evidence suggests Utahraptor may not have hunted alone. Some fossil sites show multiple individuals found near the remains of large prey animals. This hints at the possibility of coordinated hunting, groups of predators working together to bring down animals far larger than themselves, much like wolves or lions do today. And if that interpretation is correct, then prehistoric prey animals were not simply being chased by a single hunter. They were being surrounded. Precision killers. Another famous raptor, Deinonychus, may have been even more sophisticated. At around 3 meters long, it was smaller than Utahraptor, but possibly more agile. Its name means terrible claw, and that claw was designed for precision. Instead of delivering one massive killing blow, Deinonychus may have used repeated slashing attacks. Strike, retreat, strike again, gradually weakening the victim. Fossil evidence from prey animals shows patterns of repeated injuries rather than a single fatal wound. This suggests a hunting strategy designed to wear down prey slowly. In other words, these predators may have used endurance and coordination rather than brute force. Overkill behavior. Even smaller raptors displayed surprising levels of aggression. Velociraptor, famous from movies, was actually about the size of a large dog. But fossils show something unusual. Some prey skeletons show far more bite marks than necessary to kill. Dozens of slashes, multiple attacks, damage that goes far beyond what would be required for feeding. Scientists sometimes refer to this as overkill behavior. It occurs in modern predators too. Foxes, wolves, and cats occasionally kill more prey than they can eat. But in prehistoric ecosystems, where survival was harsh, such behavior might have been even more common. The apex predator. At the top of the dinosaur food chain stood the most famous predator of all, Tyrannosaurus rex. T-Rex reached lengths of around 12 meters and weighed up to 8 tons. Its bite force is estimated at over 12,000 pounds per square inch, one of the strongest bites of any land animal in history. That kind of power could crush bone instantly. But interestingly, some fossils suggest that T-Rex sometimes delivered non-lethal bites first. Marks on dinosaur bones show injuries to legs, tails, and flanks that appear to have happened before the fatal attack. In other words, the predator may have crippled its prey first, then delivered the killing bite later. And T-Rex may not have been above turning on its own species either. Several T-Rex fossils show bite marks that match the teeth of other T-Rex individuals. Possible evidence of cannibalism. In prehistoric ecosystems, survival could be ruthless. Violent herbivores. But not all prehistoric violence came from predators. Even plant-eating dinosaurs could be incredibly dangerous. Take Triceratops. This massive herbivore weighed up to 12 tons and carried 3 enormous horns. For years, scientists believed these horns were primarily defensive. But fossil skulls show something interesting. Many Triceratops fossils have healed puncture wounds and fractures caused by the horns of other Triceratops. These animals were fighting each other. Repeatedly. Sometimes violently enough to leave permanent damage. Similarly, the armored dinosaur Ankylosaurus carried one of the most powerful natural weapons ever evolved, a massive tail club capable of delivering bone-shattering blows. Studies suggest that a full swing from this club could break the leg bones of large predators, and possibly of other herbivores too. Even seemingly peaceful dinosaurs like Stegosaurus possessed deadly defensive weapons. The spikes on its tail, sometimes called a thagomizer, could puncture bone. Fossils of carnivorous dinosaurs have been found with holes in their ribs that match Stegosaurus tail spikes. In the prehistoric world, even herbivores could be extremely dangerous. A titan of the Ice Age. Millions of years after the dinosaurs disappeared, new giants dominated the planet. During the Ice Age, enormous mammals roamed across frozen grasslands. Mammoths, giant sloths, saber-toothed cats. But among these giants lived a creature so strange that for centuries people thought it was just a myth, a gigantic prehistoric rhinoceros. Its name was Elasmotherium. Standing over 2 meters tall at the shoulder and weighing around 5 tons, Elasmotherium was one of the largest rhinos that ever lived, but its most famous feature was its horn. Unlike modern rhinos that have 2 smaller horns, Elasmotherium had one enormous horn positioned in the center of its forehead. Scientists estimate this horn may have reached up to 2 meters long. That's nearly the length of a human. The creature's powerful body and strong legs allowed it to charge at incredible force. Any predator facing an angry Elasmotherium would have encountered something like a living battering ram, and its appearance may have inspired ancient legends of the unicorn. The end of the age of monsters. Eventually, even the giants of the Ice Age disappeared. Climate shifts, changing ecosystems, and the arrival of humans all played roles in reshaping the planet. But the pattern of Earth's history is clear. Mass extinctions destroy old ecosystems. Then, evolution builds new ones, new predators, new giants, new monsters. The extinction of the dinosaurs did not end the age of powerful animals. It simply opened the door for new forms of life to take their place. Today, the world may seem quieter, but the legacy of those ancient ecosystems still surrounds us. Birds are living dinosaurs. Whales descend from land mammals that return to the sea. And every predator alive today carries echoes of those prehistoric hunters. Because in the story of life on Earth, the age of monsters never truly ended. It simply changed shape.